when we talk with our team about how to approach customers, it's really helping them to figure out what their challenges are. What is it costing us? What can't we do today? Where are our real problems? Where are our real challenges?
We don't celebrate when we sign the deal. We celebrate when the customer's live, when they're realizing value. And this whole process is to get them to that point of excitement, to get them those results.
AI is an outcome. What you need to look at is what is needed to run a good AI platform. For a lot of companies, the biggest challenge is not to build agents. The biggest problem is to have a good parsable, structured set of data.
Hey everybody, welcome to the State of FM. I'm Jen Schiffman, I'm the CMO here at FEXA. And today I'm joined by Beth Mooney, who is our Director of Product Marketing, and Bart von Praag, who is our new Chief Revenue Officer. Well, I don't know if I can call him new. He's been here for at least half a year at this point. We are all gathered here today to talk to you a little bit more about what does that ideal purchase journey look like when you're talking about a platform, when you've been on one system or you don't have a system supporting you from a facility management and orchestration perspective, and you need a little help. And I'm really excited to have Beth and Bart here today, because what we want to talk to you about is that we're not looking at features, friends. We're looking at a bunch of different things. We're orchestrating. We're not only looking for an orchestration platform, but we're actually orchestrating the buying process internally. And we want to give you some tips and tricks to help you figure out how you can do that to the best of your ability, so you end up with a great result, great technology, and a great partnership. So with that, we'll take it away. First, I kind of wanted to turn it over to you, Bart, and ask you a little bit about what are the types of things that you see happening when deals stall? You've started a conversation, or maybe even back it up. What are the tips that you're giving to our buyers to address their buying committees and prevent that stall from even taking root?
For us, usually deals stall, and it's not because of product. More often than not, deals stall because the organization has not done the internal work to prove why change matters right now. So the FM team typically feels pain every day, like emergency repairs, vendor noise, poor visibility, etc. But finance does not approve the pain. So finance needs to approve, in fact, a business case. So in today's market, that case should be stronger than ever, right? Because R&M and utilities are being called out as real SG&A pressure by large retailers. And also refrigerant regulation, right, is creating compliance and CapEx pressure. So that, in combination with a skilled labor getting scarcer and harder to source, there's real pressures out there. So the problem is no longer we need a better CMMS. What we are seeing is that the problem is we need a better operating model for our physical assets. And I think there is a bit of a disconnect between the world in which the facility management lives versus where finance and the operations management lives currently, as it relates to how they're looking at the reality.
Yeah, I think those are all great points. And Beth, you come from the industry. You spent a lot of time with our CS organization before you came to the dark side and joined marketing. What have you seen from your experience? I know that in rallying customers, sometimes you have a champion. Sometimes people don't see it the same way internally, or they struggle to find their voice with that group. What have you seen that kind of aids in this problem and maybe helps to resolve it a bit?
Yeah, no, I think Bart hit the nail on the head, right? Like, finance doesn't fund features. So that whole conversation has to fundamentally change to really be about the business and the business capabilities. Seeing a lot of these, there's a pattern in that, sometimes by the time you get to a vendor comparison, there's so much work that maybe didn't happen in the process. And that is where that alignment with the cross-functional teams, right? What is our problem? I think a lot of times folks are not addressing that. They're just talking about this new piece of technology and totally missing the opportunities to get the rest of the organization bought in.
Yeah, I think that leads into the next topic that we wanted to cover, which is I'm really proud that we have a very consultative approach when we go in and talk to existing customers, new customers, about where it is that their pain exists in the business. How does that address meaningful business priorities if they don't come up with solutions, if they do come up with solutions? And as we've all mentioned, all too often, the focus is on features. People want to rush straight to a demo. They want to see it in action. And that's really, that's easy for the people too who are day in and day out. Where do I click? What do I have to do? Is it going to do the one specific thing that is going to make my life easier when I'm on my machine at 3 a.m. trying to fix this one problem, right? But these are large purchases for these enterprise organizations. And I know that we have a really specific philosophy here about guiding our buyers on a journey where we identify the capabilities, not the features and functions, but the capabilities that they need to be successful. So Bart, why don't you talk a little bit more about that and what our consultative approach toward what is a capability? Why should our audience be thinking in these terms rather than rushing straight into a demo?
Yeah, good point. So it's really like, when does a feature become a problem, and and how does like an FM leader figure out required capabilities? It becomes a problem when it replaces strategy. Most feature lists are just, a structured list of frustrations, right, with the current system, which is useful impact and input, but it's not a business case. Configurability. We need more configurability. That's a feature. Another one could be we need dashboards or better dashboards. Like a required capability says a leadership needs portfolio level visibility into an R&M spend.
Yeah.
And I need to understand my asset health, or I want to understand more about my vendor performance, or if it's related to TrackRef, whether there is a compliance exposure that I should be concerned about. So this distinction, in my view, matters because finance does not approve dashboards of features. That's not how they look at the world. Finance approves control, risk management, visibility, performance, and better reporting. And I think that when you connect with the actual users and with facility management, the features are an important part of dialogue. The challenge is how to translate it back into the capabilities that generate outcomes that are valuable and meaningful for people that use that data on a day-to-day basis. And that is typically finance and operations management.
Yeah. And from your perspective, Beth, I know we also often talk about what's the value for the customer. So even when we are talking about features, at the end of the day, we try to bridge to those required capabilities. When you're thinking about enabling our sales organization, enabling our buyers, how do you consider the way that they need to think about some of these things?
I think if we think of this in terms of an RFP, right, a request for a proposal, a standard RFP is assuming you already know the right questions to ask. So I think taking it a step further backward, when we talk with our team about how to approach customers, it's really helping them to figure out what their challenges are. What is it costing us? What can't we do today? Where are our real problems? Where are our real challenges? That's the difference in the conversation where we are really trying to help guide not only our internal teams, but our customers to better understand where their challenges are. And it's kind of like, we need to be able to do X. Can we do that today? Yes or no? It's that simple. Where I think that's a difference in how we kind of approach this dialogue, really trying to understand where the gaps are and where the pain is today, to help them make an informed decision, even if that's not around our portfolio, to really better understand their business.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great point. And we often are lucky to have someone who sees the broader problems. They might need our help to kind of organize and think through how they're going to express these in terms that a CFO, that other executives in their organization are going to buy into. But how do we equip, Bart, what we would call a champion? How do we equip someone at a large retailer that knows that they need to make a change? They see the ROI potential if they have the right technology and partner. What are we doing in this process with them to make it an easy job for them to bring the meaningful case forward?
Let me first maybe go back into what a really good champion looks like.
Yeah, let's do that. Go right ahead.
Question, because I think the word champion and what a champion is and what a champion is often cause for debate. Look, in my view, like a good facility management champion is a translator, is able to look at a problem like it's a Rosetta Stone. So can translate it to what does this mean for the facility management organization? What does it mean for the site operators? And what does it mean for the finance and operations part of the business? How do I do that with repair and maintenance cost control? How do I do that with labor productivity? How do I do that with compliance risk, vendor governance, capital planning, etc.?
Mhm.
So a weak champion would say, hey, like our system is outdated. Like we need to think about AI. A strong champion would say, our operating model makes it really difficult to control key indicators that we need to excel on to prove that we're a good and healthy business and that our EBITDA is as good as it can be. So the performance that happens that gets consolidated in the financial statement, that performance, that consolidation actually happens at the locations themselves.
Mm.
And good champions understand that and understand that in that journey of consolidation, there are stakeholders, there are people that need to understand what needs to change in the way that they can use the information to help them in their work.
Yeah.
That's a great champion. And they don't come falling out of the sky like a Reddit nice and great. They have to be built. And I think
Yeah.
it's the challenge of the sales executive to be able to and build and develop good champions. And it is much easier said than done. This is a difficult
Yeah.
task.
Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think a lot too, we look at this champion and from their perspective, they're thinking all of this happens at the demo, right? I'm going to get to the demo and then I'm going to convince the whole business what I see and why I think it's great. Where that conversation happens so much earlier, Bart, to your point of learning the right language to speak, understanding who is impacted at what point. I think it's so much deeper about learning how to speak that language to your internal team. And it happens way before the demo.
That's a great point. I feel like we should have some merch that says no demo first. We should just spread the word, identify your pain points, talk to your
Yeah.
team, and I've worked for other companies and I think we say this here, we don't celebrate when we sign the deal. We celebrate when the customer is live, when they're realizing value. And this whole process is to get them to that point of excitement, to get them those results, because if they don't experience that, then none of us are here. And I know that we have a lot of passion for this industry, so it's really a labor of love for all of us to help our customers be able to have this journey and to be able to get what they need at the end of the day, which is great technology and partnership. One new thing, which I might be going off script here, I know we did a little prep in advance of this conversation, but one thing that I know is coming up a lot is AI, and maybe we have talked about this a little bit before. But Bart, how do you encourage buyers to think about AI in the process of evaluation of the platform? How are you thinking about, is that something where you're like, listen, let's put that off to the side until a certain point? Or, when do you start really talking about the hot topics that I'm sure people are saying, my leaders want AI. What are we doing with that in this journey?
It comes up all the time because
Yeah.
AI is on everybody's mind, and in every level of the organization, people are asking each other and themselves, what are we doing with AI? I think the AI is an outcome, and really what you need to look at is what is needed to run a good AI platform. And I think that for a lot of companies, the biggest challenge is not to build agents. The biggest problem is to have a good parsable, structured set of data. And that's why within FEXA, we have moved and we are moving from CMMS to, we are essentially a data collection layer that helps define asset management in the broadest sense of the word, both from a CAPEX and from an OPEX perspective. If you want to run learning models on that, it's very powerful, but you need good data. So assuming that you have good data, which is something within FEXA we're very, very cognizant of and that we're focused on, the second question is that AI is not a standalone. It doesn't mean that what you were doing in the past is not relevant. What it means, at least to me, in the way I would explain it, is that it is a awesome tool to have alongside that it creates a significant amount of productivity in areas where time is spent that does not generate value typically. This is work that has to be done, but that can now be automated. So it's a companion to somebody doing work on a day-to-day basis, and not just a companion in taking away annoying tasks. It is a companion that takes away tasks, but also when you start elevating it up in different layers of the organization, starts to express itself in certain logic that is very powerful.
Mm.
Logic that particularly has strong predictive power as it relates to budgets and how budgets develop over time,
Yeah.
assuming that the data sets backing it up are clean and structured and parsable. For finance, for instance, that's very useful for developing forward looking budgets. For facility management, it's very helpful in terms of understanding which, your vendor management, which vendors perform, which ones are not so good at performance. And it can take away the busy tasks that distract people from their value added activities.
Yeah, absolutely. I know all of us would love any and all solutions as we are coming up with them here to put us on that path as well. And Beth, you're so close to this the AI that we are implementing in our product and internally as well. And you've been a champion on both of those fronts, really connected with the product team. What would you add to that?
I think I think looking at it from that standpoint, that it's not AI for AI's sake. And I think that is the trap we're in right now. We need AI. I think it's taking a step back, and it's how we build AI into our product to solve problems. So it goes back to that really simple understanding of, you know, if you can't see your repeat spend across locations, and you don't understand what that cost you, I
Yeah,
guarantee it probably cost you a fortune that was avoidable in some sense. So the question becomes, how can AI help me not spend unnecessary money, right? How can I potentially avoid those things? And that's where, in our case, one of our AI agents comes in to handle that very specific problem. So I think it goes back to understanding, what can't we do today, what would we like to do, and then what are the what is the capability in whatever platform we're looking at that can do that. Furthermore, who has AI that can evolve and change and grow and help us to kind of build on that journey as we get the easy things checked off,
yeah.
and then we need to go further along the list.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that lends itself to, we probably see some very poor RFP questions associated with AI and many other elements of this journey. Um, let's
Do you
talk.
have AI is not the question.
Do you have AI? It's
Yeah,
it's like one of those kindergarten notes. Like, do you like me? Yes or no, right? Like we've got, it's a
yeah.
binary, anything but, right? But so we do see a lot of RFPs. I know you are both intimately familiar with the many RFPs that we see. And as we talked a little bit earlier, we can fill out an RFP, but that does such a disservice to the buying organization in their journey of trying to find ideal technology and partnership. What would we say are some of the core benefits of a more guided evaluation process, Bart, to try to encourage individuals to think, because they could end up getting stalled down the road. We started this conversation, how do deals stall? If it's a checklist and there's no texture and you're not really building a value story, let's talk a little bit more about what that guided evaluation process looks like.
From the outset, you have to be very clear with your champion, you know, what it is that you're solving for. So if it's if I'm talking with an FM leader or a champion that may be resting in a different department, and they want to make the case to start with what's going on with vendor conversations and vendor management, I would say that's interesting. But the better move is to start with the internal case for change. What's the cost for staying the same? What's the risk that you're carrying? What capabilities you actually need, and who needs to approve it? I think if you answer those questions before you get to an RFP or an RFQ, the evaluation gets much faster, and the internal push and convincing of stakeholders becomes easier. and a decision on platform becomes much clearer. So I would bring it back to, is your operating model that served you well in for the last whatever 10 years, does it still serve you today?
Yeah.
And that's a relevant observation that I think we all know intuitively, that the changes that are happening, that are driven by changes in technology, in many cases, the operating model is it's a bit outdated and needs to be reevaluated. That's, in my view, the place to start.
And I love how that weaves right back into kind of that education of a champion, right? You're really causing someone to think outside of their role potentially and think about a much more strategic impact across their business. So that's really the difference. It's not just do you have X, Y, or Z module or feature. It's really taking a step back to understand what the implications are of such a gigantic change, and arming them to be able to have that conversation thoughtfully.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Um, Something that I learned early on working at FEXA when I did a ride along with a customer is that certain departments will come out of the woodwork and can make or break getting these deals approved as well. Procurement, IT. Bart, what would you say to FM leaders who might not be thinking about, they don't have, sometimes they've been using these same systems, like Beth just mentioned, for a decade, and they don't, there are some functional steps to prepare other bigger parts of enterprise organizations for the change that comes, to not end up having these things blocked. How do you coach and prepare our buyers in that process so that IT does not turn around and say, well, this is huge change management and we're going to have an internal charge back of hundreds of thousands of dollars sometimes?
Yeah. I mean, I would always take the approach that, like, if I was talking to an FM leader, I'm looking from the outside in, you're looking from the inside out.
Mm.
And I'd like you to walk away with a point of view, whether you choose FEXA or not, but which is a relevant point of view. Platform selection is not the first step. Internal alignment is. So before you publish an RFP, you need to know why you want to change and why now. And what outcome are you funding and what outcome are you planning for? And who needs to approve it? And what capabilities really matter here? And what's the risk of the status quo of doing nothing?
Mhm.
Right? That's also an option. I think organizations that get approval to move forward know what outcomes they're funding before they start evaluating software. And I think that would be my biggest, like, contribution I would like to have out of that conversation, whether they choose FEXA or not, is that, start solving the right challenge and plan for that before you start asking the market to respond to with pricing, and before you start thinking that the tool, a CMMS tool, can solve it.
Yeah, I often think sometimes buyers think the hardest conversation is going to be with that vendor. And it's not. It's aligning everyone cross-functionally. It's understanding why should we make a change? And I love what you said, Bart. Like, what's the risk of doing nothing? What happens if you stay status quo? Like, that is such a powerful thought provoker, right? Because this is such a huge change. It really does take aligning internally and understanding understanding what everyone is dealing with and everything that they're going up against in order to come in and look at the right problem set, if you will, in this new software.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Um, One thing I wanted to, so kind of getting into the weeds a little bit here before we wrap things up. If someone, whether they're talking to FEXA or not, what should be on the minds of our buyers? Can we give them some kind of pointed recommendations of what they should be asking vendors in the evaluation process? Maybe we're making some assumptions that we've done all the right things. We're guiding them in the right direction. They're not going straight in for the demo. What are some of maybe those hidden important factors or areas where we would guide them to think critically and ask hard questions as they're going through the evaluation?
I would focus on, roughly 5 questions. The first one is, can you help us quantify the business problem before we show software? And the second question would then be like, which required capabilities map directly to cost and risk management and compliance or productivity metrics, whether it be labor productivity or vendor productivity. That leads to three, which is, how do you actually improve the visibility, across the full set of assets and in your work life cycle. That's where the data and the data flow becomes apparent. And I would look at, how do you support predictive and proactive maintenance and not just reactive ticketing. I'm hearing a lot of noise in the market about off budget requests, and nobody likes to go back to finance for a request for discretionary budget. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
we didn't take it along in our budget. Sorry, we didn't. There's unforeseen cost. And then probably the most important piece is, what proof do you have that adoption actually then changes outcomes, right? Which is, what's the current situation? What if you do nothing? And then how does that relate to if you do change that situation and you subtract current from new? What's the delta? And is that delta convincing enough to have a compelling business case? I think they should be careful with any vendor that says yes to everything. Oh yeah, let me show you the demo. Let me show you my toolbox. That's not confidence. I think that's yeah. In the Netherlands, you say, you're just wearing cologne. It doesn't say anything about, what's really in there. So, I think that those are things I would focus on. Yeah.
And what about you, Beth? Anything you want to add there?
I love that. Doing the work before the RFP, tying it back to a number, knowing what it costs, bringing the right people along. But then also, what should you be able to do in a year from now that you can't do today? Like future thinking, where do you want to get to that today is you're just not able to? I think again, like really thinking about those problems and about what the desired outcome is going to be is the way to approach it. Um, I would also say too, when you do get to the point of a demo, uh, my personal philosophy is, you want it to be run on your worst day, not the best demo. Nothing breaks between 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, right? It's those outliers. It's those situations. So you want to be able to, if you're not able to quantify where the pain is and what that outcome is, you're not going to be able to really have a solid understanding of how that platform can support you from a feature standpoint, but also from a business outcome. So it's really tied back to why it's so important for you to do the work to be the driver of that conversation and not to just look at, again, a toolbox of, of,
Yeah.
of things. You really want to be the one in control.
Yeah. Yes, if from your mouths to the facility god's ears, right? For us to make these impressions on our audience and for them to feel enabled to bring this forward, and because I think we've seen such an evolution in this industry. We've seen where the legacy ordinary systems were, and one of the things that I loved about FEXA that made me want to join the company is just the focus on innovation, the focus on the customer, solving real problems, delivering real business value. And it's not just about clicks at the end of the day. So there's so much more to get excited about than just that demo, than just rushing forward in a process, just an RFP. And I love that our team is guiding people along that journey. So we're close here. I just have one final question before we say farewell to our audience. Remember to join us here on YouTube. We're going to continue these State of FM conversations, and we would love for you to subscribe and follow along. So in closing, we'll start with you this time, Beth. What do you want FM leaders that are watching this to walk away knowing, even if they don't choose FEXA? We've covered a lot of things, but maybe like the one piece of wisdom that you would impart here as we wrap things up.
I think I think it comes down to if you want to get this approved, you've got to do the hard work before the RFP. And that starts now. That starts today, regardless of where you are in your budget cycle. Start asking the questions, start doing the work. The deals that are going to stall are the ones that get stuck in an RFP because it's avoiding doing that hard work. So I guarantee you it will pay off in dividends, help you further in your career, better understand a business, build your acumen, but ultimately get to that desired outcome for the business. You got to do the work.
Mic drop. Love it. And Bart, what about you?
Yeah, I would focus on, and my message would be, And I think this is the name and the title also of the podcast, I believe. It's just, what is the state of facility management? And I think it's changing significantly because the cost structure of physical space is changing. And for years, facilities, were treated as a reactive cost center. Something breaks, something opens a ticket, and somebody opens a ticket, and the vendor gets dispatched, and an invoice gets approved. And that model is under pressure. People need to know that R&M and energy costs are rising. Regulations are forcing more discipline. There's a huge shortage of skilled labor, which is driving up cost. And I would say, generally speaking, large retailers are reinvesting in existing stores, which creates more assets to monitor and to maintain. So the opportunity here is to move facility management from a reactive administrative cost center, if you will, to I would say instrumented control, and that's where the AI and the modern platforms matter, and only matter if they're tied to real operating outcomes that are connected to a well thought through operating platform. That would be my message, and that change is real, and I think that is already sweeping through facility management, and is sweeping through our economy in general, as we all know.
Oh, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Bart and Beth. It's been a real pleasure to chat with you on this topic, which I think is a critical one. And until next time, we'll see you on the State of FM.
Awesome. Thank you.